My name is Sonia Armundi, and today I'll be going through the information associated with the DRIP 2026 program. So, for those who are not familiar with the program, the course essentially bridges academic knowledge with professional practice and advances models of design research. So, it will offer students, in the form of a 6-week internship, the opportunity to apply critical research and visual communication skills to focus work within the professional office of a local practitioner. So students selected to participate in DRIP are essentially hired to work on a research project that's defined by the host office, which is intrinsically linked to their ongoing professional activity. So the program is for third and fourth year undergraduate Daniels students. And again, it takes place for 6 weeks for the summer semester, and that is beginning May 4th, 2026. These are just a few examples of past participating firms. So you'll see there's a really nice cross-section of what Toronto architecture, landscape, and design has to offer. So you can see Barcelona Design, Dennery Basai, Studio, ERA, so that focuses on heritage, Farrow Partners, Frontier, GH3, again, LGA, Societe Perot, Williamson, WZMH, ZAS. So a bunch of firms that vary again in size, the scale of work they do, the type of work they do. In terms of eligibility, the prerequisite is 1 credit of an ARC 300 level course. And this course will be open to include fourth year graduated students. The academic credit you'll receive is one full credit course, and the course code is ARC 495. So in terms of your evaluation for the course, final grading is determined by the internship performance and employer feedback, which we do get back from the employer at the end of the internship, contribution and participation in the weekly seminar, and the quality of the final DRIP document. So we'll get to those pieces a little bit more, but that is essentially what is evaluated. There was a Wednesday seminar, so it starts May 4th, ends June 12th. Interns work full-time, basically Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. So it's a 4-day work week. And then on Wednesdays, you come to class 2 to 5. And the time before that, you wouldn't be at the office, but you would have that time to work on your course assignments. In terms of compensation, you'll be getting $3,700 at the conclusion of the internship, which is essentially $22 per hour for a 4-day work week. The application requirements include a CV, a letter of interest, so 250 words maximum, and a portfolio, which all need to be in PDF format. Your CV should include both curricular and extracurricular activity. It's really a good idea to identify software knowledge, workshop training, any additional practical knowledge, anything that you think would be helpful in the matching process. Because again, we're matching students to these firms. And again, the purpose of the CV is to help with that. Any previous experience in architecture is not required to participate in DRIP, but certainly if you have any, do include it in your CV. Your letter of interest should be concise and include an expression of your areas of interest by addressing the following. So, what your motivation is for participating in DRIP, describing courses of highlight at Daniels, so anything that might have had an influence on your interests and your work. And then you identify in that letter areas of practice, and you'll see we'll get into that a little bit more on the next slide, but there's a rank checklist for that. And then identifying your areas of research. Interest areas of research, and that's also a right checklist. My understanding is that part of the online application actually includes a section just for this, but it's a good idea to also include it in your letter of interest and tie it together with what you're putting together for that letter. So the areas of practice and research methods, you'll be asked to select top 5 areas of practice from the following list, and all the participating firms will also be asked to choose the top 5 areas of practice and the top 5 research methods. And that is how we pair, that helps us pair students with offices to ensure there's an alignment of interests and skills. So, for example, the areas of practice include urbanism, landscape, building tectonics, building details, energy performance, exhibition, publication, again, to name a few. And then examples of research methods or model making, mapping, computation, diagramming, spatial analysis, etc. Your portfolio should include a visual representation of your design and or research work. So it doesn't need to include both design and research, but it's important that it includes work that best represents your strengths and your interests. In terms of the selection process, there is an academic selection committee that is put together. And they will review and assess student applications, including all the components, the CV, the letter of interest and portfolio, as well as grades. And they create a short list of recommended applicants to each participating firm. And then from there, the final ranking of students is made by the firms themselves. So that's essentially how the process works. And any questions, certainly you can reach out to me directly once you start putting your application together. If there's anything that's not clear, if you just have some questions about how that process works, or certainly anything about DRIP, you can ask me about. In terms of important dates, obviously there's the information session. I think probably one of the most critical is the application deadline, which is the 25th of February, 2026 at 9 a.m. So that's after reading week. The selection committee shortlist, that will come between February and March. Similarly, the firm's ranking is due in around early March. And then these are ranges because things, will vary at least slightly. But the students get notified about their success um, or their success, let's say, or not, mid to end of March. And then student acceptance deadline is end of March. And then if you're accepted, there's some paperwork that needs to be done. So there'll be a deadline that you'd be made aware of at that time. And then the internships begin May 4th. So that was the first part of the presentation. That's just to give you a rundown of what DRIP is about, requirements, applications, some important dates to keep in mind. This next section of the presentation is just some sample work to give you a sense of what you might be doing in an office, again, kind of going through the offices that have participated, what they've asked students to do and how they've approached it. And some of the work as shown here is from 2025 when I was DRIP coordinator. Some of it is from previous years when Pina was running it herself. She's still very much involved. She's the director of DRIP. I'm the coordinator. So this is something that she started in 2022 and that we've continued, or that she's continued and that I have started in 2025. So you'll see work from all years essentially, whether it was under me as the instructor or Pina. So the first example is from BDP Quadrangle from Joseph and Evie. So the interns here focus on improving and automating Quadrangle's embodied carbon calculation process, which started by calculating the embodied carbon of the building envelope of some of their projects. So this is just to show a very technical example of some of the things you might do. So being in Revit, using Excel sheets, just very, very data heavy. Obviously, there's some representation aspect to it, but again, very, very data heavy. Versus this next example from Farrell Partners that Maru and Vanille worked on was essentially a film, and which was part of an exploration to ensure that the accessible dissemination of neuro art concepts, and ensuring that that could reach a broad audience. So Farrell Partners wanted a film done about some of their work they were doing, and again, the end result, as opposed to being something that we consider capital A architecture, was architectural, but the end result was a film. At Giannone Petriconi Associates, Olivia looked to develop a critical curated index of 2D and 3D architectural representation typologies that most effectively disseminated GPA's unique approach to the layered city, and also influenced and guided its design development. So you can see even just in these three examples, going from something very technical, film, something very narrative based, to something very poetic and beautiful in terms of its end result in these drawings. So you can have a very different experience from one firm to the other, but all just a very rich experience. At Herrera Porterini, Nicole explored the role of diagrams in effectively communicating architectural concepts across various building types. So it's essentially studying how diagrams can distill complex design elements into these clear, legible visuals. So that's something that, you do a lot as students, but as buildings are, built, they're really complicated. How do you make that super clear? So that was her project for that 6 weeks. At NJMA, Anna was working to measure the embodied carbon of interior finishes. And it basically needed wanting to establish benchmarks for various assemblies and finishes and analyze recreation functional programs to identify carbon intensive areas. So it ended up the end result was a catalog that the office could reference for their interior finishes. At Janet Rosenberg's studio, Songzi was part of creating the Sustainable Action Plan, and that was part of JRS's kind of growth strategy is they wanted to create this document which aimed to formalize their role as an industry leader in the integration of sustainability metrics into high quality cultural landscapes. So Songzi's analysis looked a lot like this, diagramming, kind of understanding other SAPs that existed where there was maybe missing information and how the action plan they were working on could fill in those blanks. At Frontier, Karina was to articulate and substantiate the hypothesis that narrative drives human habitation, and that narrative is a key driver to how we occupy space, informed by culture, politics, economics, and various histories. So this is an example of something where, the end result of the research was not clear at the beginning, but that was part of the point. And so there was just a really interesting trajectory that the research took. So again, a very different experience than one might have at a place like Giannone Petriconi Architects or Janet Rosenberg Studio. At design agency, DIBA was investigating the integration of AI tools, specifically Chat GPT and Midjourney, into the early ideation stages of interior design. So AI was used to generate conceptual narratives, space program ideas, and visual inspirations. And so she was involved in projects within the office at these early stages, and they're just kind of exploring the kind of efficiencies using AI to create these images, the role of the designer in these images, etc. At Teeple, Ariel was working producing iterations for Indigenous spaces in Perry Sound at Regent Park. Through collaboration with Indigenous designers and community members, the site becomes the foremost element to research and understand. So from there, interactive tracings of program and form generated schematic design. So there's kind of this layered process here that was done at Teeple. At ZAS, John Woo was working these diagrams that were kept abstract about these kind of like essentially key terms in architecture that would be associated with these diagrams or vice versa. And the intent was for designers to use their imagination and creativity to interpret the terms' meanings, but these acted as a kind of, let's say, baseline index. At Lamas, Nur was researching, or the research began rather by cataloging existing off-the-shelf products from Maybach to Sidex. And the aim of the exercise was to get a better understanding of available materials and methods of construction related to these materials. At Denigri Basai, Giacomo was using AutoCAD drawings to construct physical prototype models. And here at the same office, Cameron was again using physical model making to kind of as part of the workflow that already existed at Denigree Design Studio. And here they're used to specifically explore spatial qualities, and work through design iterations of ongoing projects. So monomaking just being a really key part of the office's workflow, but the students using them in different ways or to explore different things. That's super cool. David tackled the ecological impacts of the firm's typical assemblies. So these assemblies from both residential and commercial projects were looked at to create a catalog of findings that were used to inform future projects. So sometimes, it's an example of what you might do is look at existing work, kind of catalog, organize it, catalog it, or analyze it, organize it, catalog it, to be an internal reference document for the office, because oftentimes people are just working away and maybe don't have the time or resources to be dedicated to a specific research project or kind of reflect on some work that's been done within the office. So DRIP students often have the opportunity to do this for the office. That's essentially the final example. Again, if there's any questions, you can reach out to me. It's sonia.ramundi@daniels.utoronto.ca. So I'm happy to answer any questions about, again, past placements, the deliverables that you see here or that we've explained here, as well as any critical deadlines. Appreciate your time today. Thank you.